Welcome to Weapons of Mass Destruction Podcast, episode 227. Can't say words. Which can be found at WMDpodcast.com/227. You can find the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction, and you can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. David, you taking notes at how stunningly stellar I did that intro?
My producer over here was informing me of things that I might have missed. I might have had it down that we are on 226 because I'm dedicated to this podcast. So you made a mistake. I made a mistake. I made it quietly, but hey, misery loves company, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, you're definitely wrong about the 226 thing, but
it was a long time.
This
I
is
like
why
living in the past.
This is why I am the math of the podcast. Okay, and you are the stunning good looks and the charm.
Oh, Happy New Year to you too, Dane. We're starting off on a different note, and I like it. I like it a lot. It does feel
positive.
good. It feels a little bit better. Like, I'll admit I'm a dumb blonde. It's okay. And then you're the brains of this operation. You're also what was I called? I was called like a rapscallion or like something.
Oh, are
like
you talking about the TikTok random TikTok comment?
Yeah, the comment. Yeah. Like
so I was a clean cut white supremacist.
Nice.
Something fascist, whatever.
That's nice.
And you were the rough crypto bro or some shit, like rough and rugged crypto bro or something like that. Yeah.
Like something to say that I was a little my demeanor or my presentation was a little less than or a little lax, shall we say?
Yeah.
But you know what? To each his own. Hey, if you're he never said if he was into it or not. By the way, maybe he's into it. Maybe he's into that kind of thing.
Which, by the way, if you would have taken that criticism to heart and bought some Bitcoin right when he said that, you would be doing pretty good for yourself.
I'd be doing all right. Hey, and then if I went back into 1999 and invested into fucking Google, I'd be rolling in it right now.
Yeah.
Or even better, if I went back to 1979 and invested in Apple, I'd be fucking killing it right now.
Yeah, why don't you just tell 10-year-old David, or in some cases preborn David, to get off his lazy ass and get into the stock market?
I'm slow playing it. I'm waiting for the next big thing, and I'm going to be all over it. I tell you what, Dane. I'm coming at it hot.
So anyway, on episode 227, folks. Yes, David.
Have you invested in your VPN yet, Dane?
I have not. Probably should though, huh? Yeah. If for nothing else, to keep the NSA bastards off my back.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
If that's the reason that if you're leaning into that particular subject, or if you live in Florida, you know the other reason why you might be investing in a VPN soon. And then also, just as a word of warning. Hey, you remember when there was supposed to be that red wave in Congress, like during 2022, I think it was, and then all of a sudden the Republicans decided to repeal Roe v. Wade, and then the wave didn't happen? Yeah, don't pull this shit right after an election, DeSantis. That's how you find yourself in the unemployment line, you dingleberry. Things were working just fine all the way up until the new year, and then now I got to enter my license for things unknown. So you know what? All right. Thin ice. You're only as good as your last landing, DeSantis. Just remember that.
We're just going to leave what David's talking about up to our fellow Florida citizens that probably have already gathered it. And to the rest of you, it's up to your imagination. So with that being said, David, we're talking about this week one of our favorite, not catchphrases, but themes. It's a theme that comes up all the time. And the theme is they hate you, right? The people in power don't really give a shit about you. And I know, depending on what group you're in and which politician is talking to you, you think, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me with politician X or party Y because they tell me they love me all the time.
I pay my taxes, Dane. I water my lawn.
Well,
I'm nice to my neighbor.
If David and I are the first, and God, I hope we're not the first, but if we are, let us also be the last to tell you that, shocker, they actually do hate you. And two sort of themes on that number, going equally at both sides, the left and the right this week, are the MAGA, the MAGTards, as I'm calling them of late, going against Thomas Massie. On the one hand, and then just any run-of-the-mill Democrat politician running things out in California in light of the horrendous biblical type disaster of the wildfires that took out large chunks of LA out there in California. So again, if we're the first to tell you, I hope that we're the last, because it seems like these sort of examples of smacking you in the face, showing you how much they hate you, are increasing in both frequency and intensity. And so I hope that you're not caught off guard by the next one. And you're already like, hey, it's like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Like, I've seen this one before. Oh, you've seen it before. Exactly.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Next time, you won't be shocked. And hopefully you'll have put no faith in them, and you will start setting up your life in ways that takes you completely away from dependence on them.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll bury the lead a little bit and come to the conclusions after we go through, our subject or matter on the subject, I guess you would say. Or you probably wouldn't if you had a brain that worked. But I did, so whatever. We're there now. But I guess it's just how many examples do you need? I mean, you watch her get off the plane, and she just does it. She just clams up.
Are you talking about the LA mayor?
The mayor, yeah. It's just like she's a robot. And she just realizes that she is in way over her head, and it's rife throughout all of it. And it seems as though, and I know we just had an election that kind of proved that most people saw it, but it's just another nail in the coffin. I don't know if there's any more room for these nails to go into this coffin anymore, but it's just like, hey, when you stop hiring on ability to perform the job that you're being hired on, and just hiring based on sex and race, which you say that you're hiring on that.
Don't forget gender, David. There's like 47,000 of them.
I thought I did with sex. Let me take out sex and we'll put in gender.
Yeah.
Based on gender and race, and the reason that you're hiring is to say that you want less of that. You want less sexism and less racism. So you're going to hire based on racist and sexist views. And see how it works out this time, Dane. I'm sure it worked out just fine for California.
Bold strategy, Cotton.
The hub of wokeness. I'm sure it worked out really well for them. And again, before we go too far, let us both say we're going to take probably a more jovial turn or accusatory turn, but whoever's been affected by this fire, obviously, thoughts and prayers and our hearts go out to you. And we hope that even if you lost everything, that your lives are still intact and you can still rebuild, and that everyone in your family is safe. Yeah. And I'm sure there's going to be a hotline to reach out to help support California. And maybe we could put that in the show notes if it comes out before Monday.
So I had originally planned to do the, Republican taking to the woodshed, the MAGA taking to the woodshed first, and then do the fire second. But, now that you talk about it first, it probably does make sense for that to go first, because I would imagine that of the two subjects, more people coming to this episode from the outset are probably going to be interested in the California fire part than the other part. Hopefully you stick around for the second part of the episode for that, because they are both equally important in terms of what we have to say about them. But we will. Let's start off the episode with the points about the California wildfire. So listen, it's been all over the news. Unless you are completely from another planet, you know exactly what's going on. It happened. And a very famous clip of Joe Rogan. They're saying that Joe Rogan predicted the fires a year ago, but if you listen to the clip, it's actually a firefighter friend that he was talking to was right. Like, listen, it's just a matter of time. And the only reason it hasn't happened now is just pure luck. Everything's way too dry. All you need is the wind blowing in the right direction at the right time, at the right speed, and a proper catalyst. And the whole thing's like a tinderbox. It's going to go up in flames, at the snap of a finger. And he said that, I think, what was it last? So not even a full year ago.
I think it's in 2017 that he was saying that.
Well,
I'm not sure.
The clip I saw was from July of last year.
Oh,
But
okay.
either way,
maybe it's July 17th. And that's where I'm getting it from. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Either way, that proved very prescient because fast forward a few months and we're here, sadly. And for those of you, and I know nobody here, no self-selected group that's watching and listening to this podcast, the fellow sane spacers, you're not asking this question, but for your normie friends that are wandering around, walking around saying, how could this happen? How could they let this happen? It's not tremendously shocking when you realize that, again, the incentives are misaligned and that they hate you. And I know that can come off as hyperbolic, but like David makes the point, right? If you're hiring on the basis of characteristics that have nothing to do with the job getting done in an efficient, effective manner, then when you're doing that, you know that there's a high likelihood that when core competency is not, if not your primary or only, it's not even, in your top 10 of metrics that you're using to qualify people for some of these jobs, then you know that just as a matter of mathematical probability, you're increasing the chance that mismanagement, poor management, all the way through the spectrum down to full-blown incompetence is going to be achieved. And if like that firefighter friend of Joe said about a year ago, if you mix that incompetency with a perfect storm of natural criteria that, whether they could have planned for it or not is neither here nor there. But once that kicks off and then competence is already in place, you have disasters of a magnitude. I think the last report I saw was 180,000 people have been evacuated or displaced.
I'm glad
180,000 people.
I'm not glad about the 180,000, but I am glad that you brought that up, Dane, because I think, we discussed before off air, hiring that way with the DEI and the woke apparatus in mind, it works all the way until it doesn't. So it works as long as there's no turbulence. You could probably climb into a cockpit, and as long as you know how to flip on the autopilot, you could probably get away for a couple of years flying a airplane, a transport, a commercial airplane, and probably not have anything go wrong. But if there's turbulence, if something goes wrong and we need you to know how to fix it, and obviously you don't because you're way overqualified for the job, just ask Kamala Harris how that feels. Or way underqualified for the job. Sorry, that'll be clipped. Anyway, it's all cool until you're standing on a jet bridge getting asked a bunch of probing questions, and all you can do is stonewall while people are literally losing their entire lives, financially speaking, and their houses, everything that they've built throughout their entire lives, and you're just all shoulders and walk out. Until you get into a room with smarter people that are going to tell you your talking points right before you walk out to the microphone, which is what she did the next day after she got into a room with all of her cohorts. So again, it looks really bad because it is really bad because there were a lot of bad ideas that you guys shoved through, and now you're reaping the rewards, unfortunately, of those bad ideas.
Yeah. And, just as some examples, because I know I can hear some of the critiques, barking in the back of our mind. Well, Dana and David, she was an elected official. She's not a DEI hire. The people elected her. Well, let's set aside the fact that the political parties themselves engage, maybe not even both of them, maybe primarily or only Democrats engage in putting forward voices and elevating people within the party to even have the ability to get elected based on irrelevant DEI criteria. But let's set aside the elected representatives for a second, and let's just go through a short list of people at high positions of power and influence within the local government there around LA that are, DEI type hires. And so this is a list put together by Patrick Bet David over on X. So Janice Quinones, is the LA Department of Water and Power CEO. She makes $750,000 a year. Christina Crowley was the first LGBTQ fire chief. Her annual salary is $439,722. Christina Kepner was the first lesbian assistant chief of the LA Fire Department. Her salary, $264,468. Christine Larson, the LA Fire Department's first Black lesbian equity bureau chief. Why that position even exists,
by the way,
makes our point. Her annual salary, $399,000. So again,
saw a fun little clip of her, by the way, that she said, should you be able, it was something to the effect of, wouldn't you want to be saved by somebody that looks like you? Was one of her quotes in this like little promo video that she shot. And then she sums it up by saying, well, for all those people that are asking me, could I carry your husband out of a burning building? If your husband's, and I quote, if your husband's in a burning building, then he's found himself in the wrong predicament. Excuse me? You're saying,
well, those houses of those 180,000 people found themselves in the wrong predicament. Isn't that victim blaming, by the way?
Miss DEI? Isn't that victim blaming? Don't you guys shame people for doing that? And then, yeah, fuck me, right? For if I show up to a goddamn burger joint and ask them for a burger, they go, what the fuck are you talking about? We sell cupcakes here. What the hell are we even doing? Like, oh. Now, sorry, I lost my shit on that one a little bit.
Now, here's the thing, because I can hear the disingenuous pricks all over the internet saying, well, the WMD boys think that if you're a woman of color, LGBT, blah, 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 whatever, check the box person, that you can't be a leader. And that's not what we're saying at all. We're saying if that's the main or only criteria that you were selected for leadership,
we are huge family or fans of Tulsi Gabbard.
Exactly.
Fuck off. Yeah. Fuck off. Like, fuck off. You obviously haven't been listening to us at all, and you're clipping us on something that you have no idea about. So go ahead.
Right. If that's the main or only criteria that you were selected on, then yeah, we got a problem with that. But again, that's not to say it can't be done if somebody just happens to check those boxes, but they had before, and maybe to the exclusion of all of those check boxes, they had the demonstrated core competency to lead such important agencies as are required when, a massive once-in-a-lifetime fire sweeps through the city. Now, again, before jumping further down Dane and David's throat, let's talk about some of the things that happened leading up to this. So the reservoirs that are supposed to be kept full of water so that the fire hydrants can have the appropriate not only water supply, but water pressure to be able to deliver when the local man or woman on the ground needs to actually fight the fire, the reservoirs were not filled. They cut $17 million from the fire department's budget last year. They sent supplies over to Ukraine. So a lot of things helping out Ukrainians while LA houses are burning. They fired firefighters. All throughout COVID, and this was a big thing that we talked about during COVID with the military, but it happened here at home sooner than that, is they fired a bunch of firefighters back during COVID times because they wouldn't get the jab. They did not comply with, botanists and other experts in the field of, making sure that brush stays clear and, just basic land management practices. They didn't comply with brush clearing protocols. They halted prescribed burns. They let stormwater wash out to sea. They live right next to the biggest body of water on the entire fucking globe, and they didn't have enough water to fight the fire. But yes, they will tell you with a straight face and hope that you don't laugh as you are cutting their face off like Hannibal Lecter, this is all due to climate change, you damn fossil-fueled, guzzling troglodytes. So again, take the list of DEI leaders, the ones responsible for many, if not all of these policy-making decisions, in conjunction or individually, depending upon their particular jurisdiction, and keep that list in mind and wonder, if you didn't just do one of the things, if all you failed to do was that you didn't keep the reservoirs filled, but you did everything else, that would be bad enough. All of it was not done. So if anybody tries to say anything like climate change, or I saw our favorite morons over on the other 98% were saying something about how, because they were also making the point that money was cut for the fire department budget while it was added to the police department budget, and that was quote unquote right wing forces. That was the potential cause of this. I'm like, when we're talking about the same super blue, been blue everywhere at almost all levels, except for like northern and some rural counties way out of the way in California, not around any urban centers. For decades and decades run by Democrats, and you're trying to make this a both sides argument. It's just, again, they're either too stupid to be deserving of a reasonable and rationed reply, or they're just trying to gaslight you. And if you come away from this thinking anything other than, and again, that's why this segment of the show is The Democrats Hate You. If you happen to be of left liberal persuasion, it's not just unique to one side. This is a super blue state or a super blue city in a super blue county in a super blue state run by Democrats forever, with all of their professed DEI principles reflected in their leadership, and the actions that we just laid out were taken, and 180,000 people have been displaced. Homes from poor, lower class shanties all the way up to multi-million-dollar mansions sit in ashes and rubble today. And it's because these people care more about their inane, irrelevant, checkbox characteristics than they do about you and your well-being. And they will tax you to death, and they will regulate you to oblivion to make it seem like their power is justified over you. All the while, your life gets worse and worse and worse, and God forbid, everything you worked for your entire life gets burned down in a night, just so that they can lord it over you, that they were the first, alphabet soup person to hold this ridiculous title that has authority that they're not entitled to. So again, if that doesn't scream they hate you to you, I don't know what will.
I've got two things to tack onto that. Let's not forget, by the way, that this is from the heart of all the people that funded the Democratic Party. This is from the richest of the rich that believed in the Democratic Party. A lot of those people said they were going to move out of the country if Homeboy got elected. Well, I didn't see him moving anywhere, number one. Number two...
It might be now.
Well, they're going to have to, aren't they? But now, your chickens are coming home to roost, because I bet you felt it's really easy to be woke when you don't have to deal with reality.
When the autopilot's on.
when you're living in the Palisades in all your the richest fucking real estate outside of the lobbyists' homes in Washington, D.C., just outside Washington, D.C., the richest real estate in the land with the most money to be able to afford that. You don't have to deal with the fucking contemporary shit of the day-to-day that we do. So, of course, you're like, well, wouldn't we just all be better just to get along with everyone and force everyone to accept everyone's differences and Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds good. Until your house is literally burning to the ground, and all the people that had all these wonderful ideas about all these ethereal things about gender and all this stuff, they were so in the clouds that they forgot about reality. You have to fucking do these things. You have to take care of things, or else this utopia is going to fall apart. And Dane, what do you think is going to happen? I'm glad you said climate change. I'm going to bring up a point that, given his due, Adam Carolla was talking about not a couple of days ago when he was discussing this topic. What do you think those people are going to do when they realize all this legislation that's been passed about global warming and all these initiatives and all these roadblocks that they put in way to have to get a permit from this place, to get a permit from that place, to be able to build back? What do you think they're going to do when they find out that, oh, you're going to have to grease all the palms all the way through, And then, by the way, after you do that, you're still going to have to wait a couple of years to be able to even start getting lumber delivered to your shit. What do you think they're going to do? Or do you think they're going to be like, you know what? This is right. If this saves one little penguin in Antarctica, then it's worth it that I have to wait. No. The most entitled people in this fucking country that just had their house burned down, now they're being told to wait. You ever told an entitled person to wait, Dane?
Yeah.
It ain't fucking fun. I'm telling you.
I can't remember who I saw it first on X, but I mean, the sentiment is all over the place, which it doesn't take a genius to realize it is. There's a very real likelihood this could turn California red in the next election. I mean,
also,
not only because of, the incompetence that led up to it, but in terms of exactly what you're saying there. Even if not for all of the red tape around the climate or whatever, just go to any major city in the country and try to build anything. It's going to take you a minimum of 6 months to a year just to get the permits. I mean, you're not even putting shovels in the ground yet. But it's just to, like David was saying, grease the palms. You got to go see this group and kiss this ring and this department and that department and blah, 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 blah.
It's almost like they use global warming to pay themselves, right? To pay their friends, right? To put all these little things in place to make sure that they'd get a little piece of the action every time somebody wanted to do something, huh?
Every hall monitor is collecting a 6-figure salary. So they pass you through 10 hall monitors. What the hell is an 11th? So yeah, even if it wasn't climate, and if it was just, I want to rebuild my house in the exact same structure that it was beforehand, I'm not changing anything else. I want to literally put, the walls and ceilings in the exact same orientation they were before it burned down. Good luck. So, not only the incompetency leading up to it, but the build back. People are going to learn in California really fast how much their local government hates them. And it's probably going to radicalize them in a way that Democrats never saw coming.
And my second point that I wanted to mention is Biden came out and said, for 6 months, they're going to recoup all 100% of everything that was lost there, correct?
Yeah.
If I saw his mandate?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Hey, you remember that one time where they accused Trump of not giving COVID aid to certain states because they didn't vote for him?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, how's Hawaii doing? What did they get? Are they built back? Did they get 100% of their stuff built back, or are they still North Carolina? Still people living in tents out there, huh? Not getting any relief there, huh? Hey, East Palestine. I believe East Palestine and Hawaii both got $750 from the government that was a loan to be paid back later when they get on their feet. This is 100% bailout for California. Again, guys, I don't know.
We'll see if they deliver on that.
Yeah. And then also, I think I saw that we sent more money to Ukraine during this time too, didn't we?
I mean, I don't know. I've lost track of what round of Ukraine aid we're
Would it not surprise you if we did? Let's just say that Crazy David might have seen something that wasn't true. So yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we did. So all this to be said, like, if you truly want to know who they love, it's the people that line their pockets, and it ain't you. It's all these people out in the Palisades. But I was thinking about it while you were going through your stuff. I bet you they fast track a couple of those permits for these people out in the Palisades.
Oh yeah, for select people that can pay for it. Yeah.
Oh, I bet you they'll expedite the process.
I mean,
to keep them on board.
There's an entire segment of the legal profession. They're called land use attorneys, and this is what they do. And I'm not poo-pooing their job. I think it's an important thing to be able to say, like, listen, I know all the contacts down at City Hall that I need to go talk to be able to push your, proposed plan through faster so that it can get built. I think that's a perfectly valid career path. There's nothing wrong with that. But certain people have the money to pay land use attorneys to do that, and certain people don't. So yeah, the ones that had their houses burned down in Malibu are going to be able to push it through, and that's going to be fine. But the rank and file Democrats, the ones that they really need to show up to the polls to, make sure that they keep dominating out there in the Golden State, they're not going to get that privilege. And like I said, it's going to radicalize them to no end. And to your point about the, Biden's commitment to back everything 100%, spare no expense for the next 6 months to rebuild kind of thing. And why not Hawaii and Ohio, et cetera, et cetera? Well, it's the Electoral College, baby. Even though it's not strictly down team lines because Hawaii is a blue state, so right, why didn't they help out Hawaii?
But how many
100%?
Electoral College votes
They
did
could
have?
lose Hawaii, and who cares? What's California, like 54 Electoral College votes?
Used to be, now it's 52. Don't forget they lost 2 of them in the mass migration.
What that means is if California turns red, nobody gives a shit about the blue wall in the Midwest anymore. They don't win any more presidential elections for as long as that holds. That's what that means. So it's incredibly incumbent upon Democrats to make sure that they don't lose California in the same way that it's important the Republicans never lose Texas. That was the big concern this go around is with all the immigrants coming into Texas, are they now going to vote Democrat and blah, blah, blah? Ended up not happening. But the point is, Texas for the Republicans, California for the Democrats, that's the key. If you can take one of those, that's the queen off the chessboard. So, yeah, I don't have any doubt that they will treat Californians differently than they did for people in the U.S. On other disasters, just because electorally they matter more. And as David said, with their checkbooks in terms of paying for politicians' campaigns, they matter more. So
it's almost impressive. I've never seen a political party in one election cycle of a president, at least, lose everything. Like, lose everything. Like, you didn't do one fucking thing right. And again, my last point on this is how many times you got to be slapped in the face, man. The same people that told you that Biden was okay, the same people that told you that the computer was Russian disinformation, the same people that told you that masks work, the same people that told you that if you got the jab, you can't get it, you don't spread it. The same people that, how many times do you have to be hit and smacked in the face by these people saying, I don't give a fuck about you? Go ahead, keep bloating blue. It's not going well.
To your point of losing everything in one term, I mean, this is my theory just off the top of the head, false bravado. I think coming out of COVID, the refrain from people like us all during COVID was, don't let them do this, because if you let them do it and if they get away with it, it's just a water or it's just a frog in the pot scenario. They're going to see what they can get away with so they can turn the heat up a little bit more next time. And I think they thought, false bravado, like I said, they thought coming out of COVID, look what we did to these people. We locked them in their houses. We masked up their kids. We forced, experimental drugs into their bodies. We told them they couldn't take their family vacation. We told them they had to hate, each other over Thanksgiving dinner when we allowed them to get back together. Like, there's nothing we can't get away with. And they pushed it too far. And, in a situation like this, they had a little bit of help from nature in terms of really bringing things to a head. But I think they got too confident. They got too big for their britches and they thought they could get away with anything. And so they kept pushing. And then they kept, demanding that parents allow teachers to propagandize their kid. Yeah. Pride, no pun intended. Letting the teachers propagandize their kids with all kinds of craziness in schools. And they just crossed so many red lines that they had to know were red lines, but they didn't care because they saw what they could get away with and they thought it was enough. They thought they broke us. They thought they won. I think they're going to find out that we weren't so easily conquered.
Yeah. I hope.
Maybe that's just my rose-colored glasses. I am, after all, more of a white pill than a black pill guy. So despite the many times I'm forced to come to terms with the fact that I shouldn't have this much confidence in people or faith in humanity, I always find a way to dig out a little bit more optimism. So I'm hoping that's the lesson from all this.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David's pill's not so white. Maybe gray. I don't think he's full black, but maybe gray.
It's always in the gray for me, though. But anyway.
So, all right. So the second part of the episode, we're going to truncate a little bit because I just know based on the subject matter and how worked up I am over it, I could definitely get pretty worried.
I was more worked up on the front. You're going to be more worked up on the back.
But yes. So, we are equal. We're 7-Eleven, baby. We're open for everybody to come get it at all times. And
Go, come and get it then. If you want steel, give them steel, lads. If you know, you know.
So on this latter half of the episode, we're talking about the magtards. We're talking about the America Firsters. We're talking about
You hear that? We're calling them magtards. See?
That's
we're
right.
equal opportunity over here.
So if
you're
you
going to be fucking stupid.
I'm sorry to any new sane spacers who
Right.
came here based on our analysis of the election. If you happen to be, MAGA or thinking Trump was the greatest thing ever, and you heard what we had to say, and you're like, hey, these guys are MAGA guys too. We told you then. Actually, we were more speaking to the left that, that's not what we are. We're happy about this versus that scenario playing out, the scenario of Kamala Harris as president. But we were always going to hold his feet to the fire. And we did, I think on the very next episode with his foreign policy picks. And now we're going to do it again. But a little bit more aggressively, because it's not just bad foreign policy picks, which would be bad enough if he didn't learn his lesson from his first administration and getting shot at twice. But then for you and to send your, again, I don't know, calling them lapdogs is an insult to the intelligence of actual dogs. But to send the, sort of MAGA influencers on social media out after somebody like Thomas Massie, somebody with the integrity of Thomas Massie, the principles of Thomas Massie, the spinal and intestinal fortitude of Massie, to be the only person in Congress that stands up and says no when the rest of you are cowed and scattered to the winds like fearful little rats trying to escape a sinking ship. Massie is the only one who repeatedly, time and time again, has been the one who has stood on principle and said, no, this is not constitutional. No, this is not actually America first. No, this is not what's in the best interest of the American people. No, this is not respecting of American civil liberties that are, not only enshrined in the Constitution, but even in the more abstract sense of the Enlightenment thought of the fact that rights come from God. Massie is the only person on the right of center side of the ledger who has an unblemished record in that particular regard. And the MAGA crowd is going full-throated against him for what? What did Massie do? Did Massie say, I want to start transitioning kids and sending more money to Ukraine and, I want to, give Israel
Total
a few more
180.
nukes and all of that kind of stuff?
Right.
No. What he did most recently is he is standing firm in his opposition to, even though it's already over with now and he's been reelected, his opposition to Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House. Because what Massie warned of, and again, we actually disagreed with Massie at the time when Kevin McCarthy was deposed, and Massie was like, listen, as bad as McCarthy is, it could be worse. And we were like, set the whole thing on fire, blah, 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 it's fine. And I still stick by that. I still disagreed with Massie on that point. But Massie was like, it could get worse. Well, he was right. It did get worse. It got Mike Johnson worse. Mike Johnson, as in, never saw a Democrat deal he didn't want to make. Send more money to Ukraine, more full-throated support to Israel to drag us into more conflicts in the Middle East. You name it. If it's money flowing out of this country and legislation being passed against the will of the American people, more importantly, MAGA people, Mike Johnson's your guy. And Thomas Massie, him and a couple other Republicans, Chip Roy from Texas, and I think a handful of others, but led by Massie, were like, no, I'm not going to support Mike Johnson just because Trump came out and said, let's reelect him House Speaker. And for that, the MAGA crowd has gone all in on Massie. And this isn't the first time, but this is the most recent time. So what got me started was this tweet from Massie that I saw the other day, which, by the way, if you don't know, Massie is a graduate of MIT. He is a genius engineer. He literally built his entire homestead in Kentucky from scratch and runs it off of a Tesla battery and all. It's completely green, has zero emissions. Not that he's a climate change Greenpeace or whatever, but he's just that level genius engineer. So if you want the true best and brightest to be leading your country, Massie is he's the antithesis of the proverbial bartender from New York City, I guess I'm trying to say. So anyway, there's always something to learn from Massie is the point I'm trying to make. So he had this tweet the other day that said, who are the most nenarded paid influencers on this platform? And I thought, Massie, it's X. You're not going to get censored. You can say the R word. He said, does anyone else compete with cat poop and DC drainage for this title? And then fortunately, I had this little commenter here actually fill me in that no, nenarded is actually a word, at least according to Urban Dictionary. And it is, quote, a person that is so retarded that in order for them to be told they are a retard, it must be said in their own language. So good on the Honorable Thomas Massie for bringing the word
Urban Dictionary
nenarded into my vocabulary.
That's the Urban Dictionary. So I bet one of his goddamn grandkids told him that shit.
I'm sure.
I'm calling his grandkids on that one. I'm not. He might be a genius engineer, but I smell a rat when I know a rat when I smell one. So anyway, go ahead.
Who's Massie talking about with cat poop and DC Drano? Well, cat poop is the actual name of the X account is Cat Turd, and DC Drano, that's what the name of the account is. And these are two of the more prolific, bigger named, I guess for lack of a better term, MAGA social media influencers. You know, all the way back from 2016 up to today, they're some of the accounts that put out the most pro-Trump, things you can imagine. And by and large, they say things that I wouldn't personally disagree with, because a lot of times they're like targeting the left and pointing out the left's hypocrisy and stupidity, and there's plenty of that to go around. So they're relatively benign as far as we're concerned, but they've kind of led the charge with the rest of MAGA after Massie on this whole, he's not a team player sort of thing. And Trump actually joined in on it by just putting out a simple tweet the other day that said, do you trust Thomas Massie? Because, of course, Trump loves his echo chamber. It's a simple question,
yes or no? Yes or no?
Right. No problem with this tweet in particular.
Right.
But, Trump likes his echo chamber, and he wants it to be ratioed with everybody saying, no, of course not. He's a terrible traitor, and he's this, that, and what he said. Well, the main thing that people are saying about Massie is he's not a team player. Because don't you know, when God King Trump says, everybody march, you march. And even if the marching is in a direction that's exactly opposite of your professed MAGA America First principles. Well, again, not to get too hyperbolic and not to draw any Nazi references. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But another famous person who's not super...
I know right where you're going with this.
Team player-ish. Yeah. Landmesser. It's the guy from the famous photo of being surrounded at a Nazi rally where everybody's doing the salute and he's just standing there cross-armed.
Didn't work out so well for him. But it's funny, Dane. It's just interesting. You remember a long time ago when we had a conversation on here. I can't even remember the episode, obviously. Not that we ever do. But where we were saying the funny thing about MAGA and woke and all this shit is that they mirror themselves. That's why they hate each other so much. Mm-hmm. Like everything that the one does,
what's your
the
favorite
other one
quote,
would
David?
do. Like, dislikes, like.
Exactly.
So the Republicans, for as much high ground that you think that you have, that you just blew, the Democrats out of the water with this last election, what are you doing? The whole thing that led down the road of the Democrats getting absolutely done this last election was the fact that they did exactly this. They went along to get along. No one had to question no one could question anything, because if you weren't on the train, you were canceled. You're off. You're fucked. Good luck getting a job anywhere else, by the way. So they went along to get along. They went along to get along. There we go. Jesus tits. And now you're doing it. One person dissents. You should want dissent. Contradictory ideals debated against each other lead to better ideals down the road. That's the whole point of it. You want dissent. Because if you just take everything at face value, that's how you end up in fucking California in the Palisades. Like, guys, stop eating your own. They're more than willing to do that on the left. Don't do it for them on the right. Stick together, by not sticking together. That makes the most sense. Decentralized authority. Like, if somebody has a problem with it, instead of just going, get them out of here, go, well, what's your problem with it? well, this, and this. Oh, those are actually good points. I didn't even think about that. Let's go and change that, and now it's even better. Like, disagreement doesn't always mean dissent. Like, it doesn't always mean that you want the other side to die. It just means like, hey, this might not be the best way to do it. So if a guy that stands up for like Dane said, he's only ever stood by what the Constitution does, which is what you want out of your representative anyway. And I believe you said that there was a vote that he drove all the way overnight to go to the Senate, I believe is what he did.
House. He's in the House.
Okay. I always get that fucked up. But he drove there to force everyone to make an in-person vote to make sure that everyone else had to vote in person so it could go on public record, because he wanted everyone to know about where they stood on this very controversial bill during COVID. Like, I'm sorry if I stole that from you, Dane.
No.
Like,
that's
the kind,
details.
Right. Yeah. That's the type of, like, the character that this guy has. This is the kind of principle that he has. And as we all know, if you don't have principles, you don't know what to stand up for. And if you don't stand up for anything, you'll fall for everything. So I yield the rest of my time to fill you in on who Massie really is to Dane.
Yeah, so what David's talking there about, and this is kind of one of the first times, not the only time, but one of the, I guess I shouldn't even say first, but one of the bigger times that Massie sort of stepped on Trump's toes is in March, April 2020, when everybody left, right, and center was losing their mind and saying, the Constitution, what the hell is that in a time of crisis? As if the whole point of the Constitution isn't so that you don't lose your rights in the time of crisis, but one person out of 435 up there on Capitol Hill was willing to stick to that principle. So Trump was, pounding the drum because he wanted to look like the good guy and telling Congress, pass the CARES Act, get the stimmy checks out there, make sure everybody knows that I'm their favorite president, kind of bullshit. And to pass a bill in the House, you can do one of two things. You can either do a voice vote or a floor vote. And a voice vote allows everybody to vote by absentee, but the catch is the votes aren't recorded. So you don't know during a voice vote passage of a bill how your particular congressman voted so that you can hold them to account in the next election. You need to do a floor vote for that. Well, a floor vote, as the name would imply, means that you need to be on the floor. It's an in-person vote, and the votes are recorded. And so Massie was like, you're going to pass how much stimulus? You're going to increase the national debt by how much? I'm not doing that. And I know that since I'm the only one objecting to it, it's going to pass no matter what I say. I'm at least going to make all of these pieces of shit, not his words, mine. He's much more better and
diplomatic.
Yeah, with his words than I am. I'm going to make them come back because again, many of them had left. They flew back home to their districts and they were sitting in their basements, quadruple masked up and just watching CNN all day. And Massie's like, no, you're going to come back to DC and you're going to do a floor vote. And how that happens is, according to the rules in the House, if a single representative, it only takes one, to objects to the voice vote being taken, then it makes everybody come back and do a floor vote. So Massie, at the 11th hour, when the House was getting ready to pass the CARES Act, which, again, fast forward, we all know how that turned out. I know Trump and I know MAGA likes to blame the entirety of inflation on Joe Biden. But remember, the spending that kicked off all of that inflation, I'm not saying Biden is guiltless, but the spending that kicked it all off was passed under Trump's watchful eye in early 2020. So Massie drove overnight from Kentucky to Capitol Hill to demand the floor vote, which, again, forestalled the vote for then because people needed to travel back, and forced them to show up. And believe me, he was getting scowls and cussed by every single person that walked through the door when they finally showed up a day or so later to do that floor vote. And now to this day, and for all posterity, we have a record of which congressmen and women voted yes for the CARES Act and are personally responsible for the inflation that we've been dealing with ever since, all because of Thomas Massie. And why did he do that? He did it because the bill itself was unconstitutional. And he wanted to make sure that everybody knew that the elected representatives, when push came to shove, didn't care about the Constitution and were willing to further put you and your grandchildren's grandchildren in debt just so they could look like the good guys in a quote-unquote time of crisis. That's who Thomas Massie is. And Trump hated him then. He called him a third-rate grandstander. He said that he was going to primary him in his Republican primary back home in Kentucky. Turns out that didn't work. Thomas Massie trounced his primary opponent by like 90%. But anyway, I mean, shocker, right? The people that live in the district that know him actually know how great he is and don't give a shit what Donald Trump says, and they keep voting for him. But that's who Massie is. And for MAGA, I can't stress this hard enough. If there is one principle that is allegedly overarching for them all, it is America first. Whatever the consideration is, whether it be economic or social or political or anything in between, the chief concern should be what is in the best interest of the American people, of the United States as a nation. If that's your principle and you're willing to, proverbially lynch or metaphorically lynch, I should say, the one person who sticks to that principle no matter what, and had that principle before MAGA was ever even a thing, just because he won't, get behind the God King's demand to put somebody in a position of power in the House that has proven time and time again to violate that principle, you are lowest of the low scum of the earth if you are that type of person. I know this usually applies on this podcast when we're talking about lefties. This time it applies to you people. To be able to go after somebody of, like I said, the status and integrity of a Thomas Massie like that. That's not a simple difference of opinion, because I'm not judging you on the basis of my libertarian principles. I'm judging you based on your own professed principles. You claim to be constitutionalist, and you claim to care about decentralization and small limited government, and you claim to care about fiscal responsibility, and you claim to care about America first. And yet all of that goes out the window with something like Trump's foreign policy, foreign policy picks, or, Trump's, House Speaker selection and yada, yada, yada. But Thomas Massie's the one who protects those principles come what may, even through the slings and arrows of all you people. And you're just ungrateful pieces of shit calling him not a team player. So I have no time or patience for any of you. You all suck. And, again, I know the lefties.
That's how you sell a podcast. Just alienate everybody.
I know the lefties are laughing, saying,
fuck them.
I know the lefties are laughing, saying, it serves you guys right. That's what you get for voting for Trump.
Well, the only thing I'll tack onto that is that when you act like this, you make the left right. I mean, correct, not you. Like, when you just ravenously follow this guy no matter what he says, that's number one, the left or right, and number two, you're doing what the left do, which are two things that I'm sure just sandpaper your nutsack, proverbially. So don't do that, and let's move forward. Let's just call this a learning exercise on the Massie thing, and we tripped out of we stumbled out of the firing blocks. Let's get back on the right track. Let's stick to the Constitution. Let's stick with America first, and then we'll go on from there. How about that? Just call the rest a misunderstanding, okay?
Yeah. And I had plenty more predictive things to say about his whole Greenland bullshit and Panama and the Gulf of America and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, we were going to truncate this part of the episode to keep it to an hour. I'm sticking to that promise. If you want to hear more about that stuff, write me personally, I guess. Get in the comment section. Tell me I'm a bad person for, defying His Holiness, Donald Trump.
Oh, no.
Sorry, I'm getting over a
RSV?
cold. So.
Is that RSV?
No.
You did you get the vaccine? Did you get the vaccine for that?
I'm quintuple vaxxed. So I'm gonna save you all of that. But like I said, if you want to know more, I am more than happy to expound. But I think I've said my piece.
It's not a manifesto. We don't have manifestos on this place or in this place, but he's got enough. He's got some thoughts.
A lot of things can be said about me or maybe this podcast in generally or in general. But I hope that one thing that can be said is I'll let David say we if he agrees with this sentiment. I will stop at nothing to defend people that I think deserve it.
Yeah.
And like I said, somebody like Thomas Massie, the greatest. I mean, if you don't want to say that Ron Paul is of our generation because he was, so much older. I mean, he was in Congress for a while we were alive, but, leaving in 2012 and all that kind of stuff. So maybe he's of the more boomer generation, X generation. So if you want to say of our generation, millennials and younger, Thomas Massie is the greatest representative of our generation, taking the mantle from Ron Paul after he retired so I feel as passionately about defending him on our humble little podcast as I would have Ron Paul in 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are people that in very many cases set aside. I know I say this isn't, very common for human beings, and it's not. They set aside their own self-interest and what's best for them. Believe me, if Thomas Massie, he is so universally loved outside of his standing up against Trump that if he just didn't say anything about Trump when he disagreed with him, he'd be up for cabinet positions, and he would be cheered all the way by these same people trying to attack him today. It's because he speaks directly against Trump when Trump isn't standing up to his own principles. That's why he gets attacked. And so what I'm saying is Thomas Massie sets aside his own potential for advancement, his own party ladder climbing, political power climbing that the rest of them are all in it for, because he cares about the things that he says. And his actions back that up. We say this always, all the time too. Never believe what somebody says, believe what they do. Again, somebody that'll do what he did for the CARES Act that we talked about is somebody of immense integrity that deserves our respect. And so to see him slandered and dragged through the mud, not that it affects him at all, but to see that, it's wrong, and it's incumbent upon people who, see things, for right and wrong to speak out when they see things that are wrong. And so that's why I feel so strongly about it. And like I said, it's him today. If somebody wants to start dragging Joe Rogan through the mud and all that kind of stuff, there's been plenty of that done. And we've gone to bat for him. Speak up just as vociferously in that regard too, of saying that's wrong, because that is a genuinely good person, period, full stop. But anyway, soapbox done. Clippity clop. That's me stepping down off of it. We'll see you back next week for episode 228.
And speaking of, Dane, where can they find 227 of Weapons of Meme Destruction podcast?
They can find this episode at wmdpodcast.com/227. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. They can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. While you're over at the website, WMDpodcast.com, check out our Support Our Work tab to see all the ways you can support us monetarily. But also, please join the email list. That's for free while you're over there to always stay in contact with the show. And you can support us in all of the other free ways, like, subscribe, share, comment, hit the notifications button, favorite on whatever platforms allow it. Anywhere you see us, that helps increase our reach. And also just the classic, the age-old one, the easiest one of all, simply telling friends and family about us, copying a link and texting it to a buddy. That goes a long way towards helping grow the sane space. And if you, like us, care about right, good things being defended in this world, and by proxy creating a little bit saner world in the process,
I hear a clippity clop coming back.
This is your place. We're home for you, and you're home for us. So welcome in.
All are welcome. And this fucking guy, clippity clop, can't believe it. Anyway, starting the new year off right. But anyway, until next week, guys, stay safe. But more importantly, stay free.